Thank you, Concorda. The bill provides, and there's a lot of provisions in the bill, but there's also parts of it that needs to be amended. The bill provides a right of access to birth certificate, birth and early life information for all persons who are adopted, boarded out, the subject of an illegal birth registration, or who otherwise have questions in relation to their origins. It also includes provisions for care and medical information for those who have questions about their origins. The bill requirement for information session where a parent has expressed a no contact preference will no longer be a physical meeting with a social worker. The information session will include explicit recognition of the identity rights of the applicant and their rights to access their birth information and birth certificate. Next of kin will be able to avail of the legislation to access information about a family member in specific circumstances. The bill also expands the definition of early life information to provide for release of baptismal certificates and entries on the baptismal register, and uses the terms mother instead of birth mother. It also establishes a new statutory contact reference register. This register offers a means for people to register their preference for contact with family, and also a mechanism to lodge communication and contemporary medical information which can be shared with family members. The state's regulator for adoption services and custodian of over 70,000 adoption files and records, including all adoption files from 1953, has welcomed the bill's publication. The Adoption Authority said it was correct to give adoptees their original birth certificates, all of their early life and care information, and critically their medical information. The co-founder of the Adoption Rights Alliance said she would welcome changes to the legislation, but warned that if any sort of mandatory information session remains, the legislation it would be extremely discriminatory, because of no other Irish citizen making a similar application would be obliged to go through with an information session with a social worker. Susan Lohan, the co-founder of the Adoption Rights Alliance, said that in addition, many of the definitions within the bill are unnecessary, limiting or extremely vague, Minister. These include care and early birth information, which had suggested time limits in a bill that was published last year. While the bill is to be welcomed, concerns remain, especially around the fact that adopted people would still have to hold an information session with officials by phone where a parent has expressed a no-contact preference, and the fact that 83 key recommendations from the joint Oireachtas Children's Committee report have not been included in the final bill. The extensive work undertaken by the committee, the hours of testimony from the adoptees, mothers, survivors and their advocates, the significant and all-encompassing report and comprehensive consultation all appears to have been in vain. Most of us grow up knowing everything about ourselves and take for granted those precious details, such as our time and place of birth. Compassion demands that adopted people should be entitled to the same sense of their own identity. Unfortunately, adopted people had to engage in a fight they never should have had to engage in the first place. This was due to the state, for years repeatedly failing to vindicate the most fundamental right of adopted people, the right to know their origins. It's seldom I get to watch TV, but I do watch programmes of families who have been separated for whatever reasons, getting together decades later. This could be a mother or a father with their son or daughter, and the joy it brings to all parties. It brings an end to decades of pain and opens up doors to new family members. Maybe it's easy for me to say this, but surely so much joy should not be denied to anyone. And yes, questions will need to be answered in all these reconciliations, and there is pain in some cases, but the benefits far outweigh the negatives. One thing I do think watching these programmes is how do their adoptive parents feel? Something we never really see much about. People that have, taken a child into their care and shown love and affection to that child as if one of their own, and is one of their own. They have done so much, and sometimes must feel a little hurt in their own right. Some of them, as I said, have reared and loved the children. They were their parents, their carers, and now must also be protected in some way going forward. And while talking about carers, and it is a different issue, I may add that I got so many calls today from carers and home health omission from the €1,000 recognition payment. It's shocking, Minister, but that's another issue for another day, but they should be treated equally. But today, we must concentrate on this bill, and while it looks like it's one step ahead, it also looks like it's 2 steps back for some people. And we have to amend. There has to be amendments put forward, and this legislation has to be amended before it comes before us again. And hopefully, we can end the pain that has been applied to so many people for decades in this country, and at least let them have some, peace and happiness. And as I said earlier on, each and every one of them would love an opportunity to meet their loved one and bring it into this mess that's been in our society for so long. Thank you.